माननीय मंत्री जी, हो गया आपका, धन्यवाद.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker, sir.
बहुत बहुत धन्यवाद.
19 honorable members have participated in this discussion, and I must admit, whenever I have come to this honorable house, following the dedication with which my honorable predecessor, late Shri Arun Jaitley, had worked on the IBC, as one member had very clearly referred that it is only since 2016 that we have this. In parliamentary history, this probably is one of those bills, now an act, which has come very quickly each time when the ground situation required changes so that this becomes a robust law. And therefore, whenever we've come to particularly to the Lok Sabha, and I find equally a positive approach even in the other house, in response to each amendment with which we come on the IBC. So I in particular thank this house for being so open-minded and positive about engaging with the government on the IBC amendments each time. I take the names of each one of them, although I'm not taking it now. Particularly in this house, I've found constructive inputs coming in and also being very encouraging about how this law has to be kept abreast so that the developments in the market, development in the economy as a whole gets reflected. This particular set of amendments, which was necessitated in the form of an ordinance, चाहे कितने भी हमारी leader of the opposition might have a reference to ordinance, ऐसे ordinance का आवश्यकता इससे ज़्यादा contextual, अब का माहौल से ज़्यादा contextual शायद 100 साल में नहीं हुआ. इससे टाइमली ऑर्डिनेंस ले आने का माहौल शायद इन 100 आने वाले 100 साल में भी नहीं हो सकता है. इसीलिए we came up with the ordinance which the Mahamahim Rashtrapati gave approval, assent, and then it became a part of the Gazette of India on 5th June. Clearly because of the pandemic, and because the Honorable Prime Minister put life before livelihood, very clearly stating, I need to save people from falling ill. The dimension and the scale of the pandemic was obvious, and therefore we had to come up with an ordinance which clearly suspended the application of 3 sections, 7, 9, and 10, of the Insolvency and Bankruptcy Code, which is, after all, a young law, only 2016. But we had to prevent any company which is experiencing distress because of the COVID getting or being pushed into an insolvency proceeding. And therefore, we had to suspend these 3 sections. And when I say 3 sections, you know, obviously, it covers all the 3 kind of creditors. Together with that, we also wanted to bring in a new section, which is the 10A, because this suspension we clearly did not want to hurt any proceedings which are otherwise due to reasons which are prior to 25th March 2020. 24th night was the notification, and 25th onwards the lockdown, and therefore insolvency proceedings which could be triggered off for reasons prior to the COVID, prior to 25th March, we clearly wanted to exclude. And therefore, the commencement itself was only from 25th March 2020, and we made it very clear that this period and any distress which may arise out of this period's situation cannot be acted upon even after, if and when the moratorium gets, or the period gets, the lockdown period gets to an end. So therefore, we gave ourselves the first 6 months with a proviso in the Act itself saying may be extendable to another 6 months maybe. And therefore, and that incidentally, even as the Parliament is in session, I would like to draw the attention of the House that we have come replacing the ordinance with this amendment as a part of the bill so that it becomes part of the Act, because the ordinance has to go away. But even as we're discussing this, that 6 months which we gave as a period of suspending 7, 9 and 10 comes to an end on the 24th of September, this month, even in a couple of days. So that was the way in which the ordinance had to be rushed in. And we also made it clear that during this time, resolution professionals shall not file any application against the director, partner of a company also. So very clear, specific, time-bound, and clearly making a distinction between the distress caused by COVID and that which can be beyond and above COVID. So there need not be any ambiguity in our understanding whether this is going to apply for anything else, not at all. Whether this will apply to the period beyond, before, not at all. And therefore, time-bound and specific character-bound, that is distress due to COVID. Just before I go to responding in particular to the various issues which honorable members have raised, I want to highlight the fact that we are not uniquely placed in this set of amendments which we are coming in. World over, several of us members have referred to it, world over countries are working to have some kind of an immediate response, temporary response, and then making sure as and when companies are going to come out of this period of distress, how they would handle it. So immediate response or a transitional response or whatever you may call it. But for immediate forbearance, specific forbearance were announced by many countries, you may name them. I'm not naming anyone, but in the larger overview, bird's eye view of different countries doing different things, you had countries coming up with specific forbearance, also infusion of liquidity to some extent into their banking system, which can then be lent forward, and then financially distressed firms were given that hand-holding through banks, and finally also relief in terms of asset classification, which was done following all the banking norms. So even the World Bank and IMF, therefore, in its responses, well after our initial Gazette notification had come, had suggested that countries should have three-phased approach to this, so that the first phase would be something immediate and interim, and the second phase would be transitional measures, that when the lockdowns or containment and all that goes away, how do companies come out of that period? And finally, a third phase of regular debt resolution. So all over the world, multilateral funding institutions are also suggesting that we should do it in phases as we come out. And post coming out, many honorable members have stated also, what if there is a rush into NCLT? What happens if there is a lot of insolvency cases coming up? So the phase-wise approach that we have taken also is to make sure in the meanwhile you're able to infuse some kind of a life into these companies, that when complete coiling back of these lockdown-related things, companies are in a position to stand on their own, however frail they may be, but as they go on, the recovery will be the message rather than the liquidation. So the whole approach that we as government have taken is to immediately help them with some relief, then look at the way in which the second phase can go on, part of which is this one, and a third phase in which we would have some kind of a resolution mechanism for those who are not able to survive and the hand-holding is inadequate in particular instances. But before I get into detail, as I said, Honorable Speaker, sir, I just want to give some figures. Very little of them, I'm not going to overburden honorable members. Section 7 relates to financial creditors, Section 9 operational creditors, and Section 10 corporate debtors. Just look at the situation up to 31st July 2020. Details of disposed cases before admission. The numbers that I'm giving you now are only those cases which are before admission, and this relates to 31st July 2020. In Section 7 cases, total number of company or cases are 2,789, and the amount recovered 1,96,171 crores. Section 9, which is operational creditors, 11,581 cases, or total number of cases as of 31/7/2020, which are disposed cases before admission into NCLT. And the amount there involved is 1,63,927 crores. And finally, Section 10, which relates to the corporate debtor, 140 cases as of 31st July, and they are disposed cases before admission, and here the amount is 15,372 crores. So this is the kind of numbers. Sorry, yes. And therefore, this is the kind of numbers with which we are watching the situation. And the pending cases as of 31/7/2020, our total number of cases in Section 7 are 4,062, 7,952 for operational creditors, and 264 for corporate creditors. I'm not getting into the amounts involved in each one of them. If I were to take a picture, some of them, and Honorable Member Nishikant Dubey also spoke about it, as to what has been the performance of different resolution or recovery channels with which we worked before the IBC came in. I'm not going to take up everything together because Leader of the Opposition, Adhir Ranjan Chaudhary, and also probably later Shri Manish Tiwari spoke about how banking sector NPAs have all come up, and we have to look at figures. I fully agree, we have to look at figures, and I'm going to have to take the example of IBC's performance as regards NPAs which relate to scheduled commercial banks exposure. I'll just give the figures so that we are able to compare very quickly. Lok Adalats. I'm only talking about 2018-19, which is provisional figures. I can compare it with 17-18 and we can go backwards. But the comparison, the purpose of giving this number here is to see the performance of Lok Adalat versus DRTs versus SARFAESI versus IBC. It's not a period comparison that I'm talking about. I'm talking about the performance of Lok Adalats and their delivery, DRTs and the delivery, SARFAESI and its delivery versus IBC and delivery. Just look at the figures. And as I said, 2018-19 provisional. Lok Adalats. Number of cases which were referred to them are 40,80,947. Amount recovered 2,816 crores, and therefore only 5.3% recovery. DRTs, amount recovered 10,574 cases, referred to 52,175. Therefore, the percentage of recovery 3.5% only. SARFAESI, 2,48,312 number of cases referred, amount involved 2,89,000 something, total recovered, amount recovered 41,876, and therefore the percentage of recovery 14.5% only. Surfacing. Now, lastly, IBC. How does this compare? Number of cases referred 1,135. Amount involved 1,66,600. Amount recovered 70,819, all in crores. And therefore, what is the percentage of recovery? 42.5%, which Honorable Member Dubey and few others also mentioned. So if constantly we are looking at how to improve IBC, make it functional, yes, there are difficulties about the number of benches not being sufficient, number of, quick appointments of people not happening, quality resolution professional being adequately trained and being in position, giving them the right mindset of looking at how the IBC code can be affected rather than liquidate but let them be a going concern, are all issues and challenges that we are facing. But we are conscious that these are the challenges. Therefore, with the performance rate given here in terms of just NPAs related to scheduled commercial bank, we, I think, should thank this House for having thoughtfully brought this IBC and made it every time more robust, as a result of which today we have 42.5% recovery. Now, I will straight go to referring to Honorable Member Supriya Sule, who said, all right, suppose this is the rate at which you're recovering, what happens to the rest 55? How is it lost? 58, it could be, 51, it can be. But that is the point of what is the valuation. When this company is coming for liquidation, what is the valuation? How many assets of it are worthy? Now, the fear is every time a delay happens, if the protracting nature of this happens, the value of the liquidatable asset keeps coming down. You end of the day, off that something gets recovered. It doesn't mean, although I wouldn't want to take the name, some of the honorable members thought, oh, you've done this because you want to give a pocketful to your friends. My friends are the companies. They can be big, small, medium, micro, nano. Any company is important for India. And under the Companies Act, even MSMEs are registered. IBC applies even to them, small companies, Companies Act. So here, the moment the word corporate or company comes, immediate imagination, mind picture is, oh yes, you know who? Sorry, none of us know who. Anybody who's registered under Companies Act, and if unfortunately comes for a liquidation, has to have a solution. Your friends, my friends, doesn't matter, all our friends, this Desh ka friends. Unless businesses run, small, medium, big, that kind of a job creation that all of us are talking about will not happen. So, solution is required for everybody. So, I already explained about why Section 10. And Section 10 suspension does not apply for pre-25th March 2020. Then the suspension, companies cannot initiate insolvency proceedings in respect of COVID default only. Companies cannot initiate only for defaults of COVID. They can initiate on other things. Let us remind ourselves, and it'll be unfair for me to say, oh, did you know? Because after all, this House has passed this law. And such a robust law which balances the rights and interests of all stakeholders, particularly of the equity and debt suppliers. It creates an imbalance if only the debtor has the right to initiate insolvency proceedings while the creditor does not have, or vice versa. Therefore, we have to constantly keep that balance with which this act was passed by this Parliament. We really cannot tinker with it in such a way that we distort something. that the balance, that fine balance which was arrived at, is distorted or it's becoming lopsided. We cannot, even in our enthusiasm, do such a thing. So I think it is important to keep remembering that this is the place where this was given birth, and we have to constantly keep the spirit of what was originally brought in. So again, I think it will be impertinent for me to go on repeating that this code is not a recovery law. The creditors otherwise have several options through which they can seek their recovery. And therefore, MSME, those of us were repeatedly saying, but this suspension is going to hurt MSMEs. Please know, MSMEs have several other ways through which they can recover their claims. And therefore, I think it will be important for us to go on looking at the various ways in which MSMEs have been attended to, even in this period. I'll just give you one or two references. Special refinance facility of 15,000 crore to SIDBI for on-lending and refinancing has happened. Emergency credit guarantee. Yesterday I was appalled when I heard some member say, oh, nothing has reached them ground. No MSMEs have got any benefit. MSMEs are suffering in the ground. MSMEs are suffering, no doubt. But nothing has reached is completely wrong. On a weekly basis, I'm putting out data by bank, the size of MSME receiving what amount. That 3 lakh crore, we've crossed. I'm not giving you exact figure, which I'm in a minute can obtain and give it to you. More than 1,60,000 crores have been dispersed. Not just sanctioned. So I think somewhere all of us are anxious about MSMEs, and I fully appreciate that. But some work is also happening. I would want you all to please take cognizance of those steps which have been taken. So then for standard accounts, emergency credit line of 3 lakh crore has been given, credit guarantee scheme, subordinate debt for SMA2s and NPA accounts. MSMEs which are NPAs have also been given by government, infusing about 20,000 crores for the MSMEs. And that numbers have also been constantly put out. So there are more such things with which I can, and also the TREADS platform. Honorable members will definitely appreciate that the TREADS platform has been very, very useful in that up to March 2018, 652 MSME sellers and 128 corporate PSUs, 37 banks, about NBFC factors who deal with factors themselves, 4 of them, have all been on TREADS. Invoices financed, you will know, amount in crores was 1,094, March 2018. March 2019, more people came into the TREADS platform. Amount which have been invoice financed are 6,669 crores of rupees. And that benefited 3,708 MSMEs. What was it in March 2020? 9,288 MSMEs have benefited from about 1,661 corporates and PSUs. Most often I'm told government departments, PSUs owe so much to the MSMEs. You're not giving money to them. March 2020, I'm giving you a figure. Subsequently, we can get the figures for the other months. Compared to March 2018, 2019, 9,288 MSME sellers have benefited to the extent of 17,834 crores purely because of TREADS. Because every bill is uploaded into that, banks are giving recognition and they discount the bills. So particular attention has been given to MSMEs so that they really don't suffer for want of liquidity. Adir Ranjan ji also asked about what about timelines. Yes, Provisional is CIRP should conclude in 180 days. It can be further extended only to up to 90 days. It should conclude at any cost by 330 days, including the time taken for litigation. However, in actual, excluding the time taken by courts, on an average within 380 days, it is getting resolved. And before the code, it's important for us to remember, before the code, 4.3 years. Take it as 4 years. 4 years was the time taken to resolve any crisis. So where is 4 years and where are 380 days? Sir, Adirji also had questions on liquidation, number of companies which have gone into liquidation and which have really been rescued. Till July 2020, the code IBC has rescued about 258 companies through resolution plans. And of the companies rescued, 1/3 were either totally sick or even defunct. Even defunct companies have been rescued. The process under the code has yielded liquidation of 965 companies. 3/4 of these companies were sick or defunct when they entered the insolvency process itself. So the companies rescued had an asset value of 0.96 lakh crores, while the firms referred for liquidation had asset values of 0.38 lakh crores when they were admitted into the CIRP. You see the fall in the valuation. Thus, in value terms, 72% of distressed assets have all been rescued. Recovery rate, Adirji, I wouldn't load you with numbers. I'll just tell you the recovery rate in 2016 was 26%. 2017, within 1 year of this law coming in, 26.4%. 2018, 26.5%. 2019, 71.6%. And that is why our ranking improves. On the benches, I think there's a lot of data available. The principal bench was only 1, 10 jurisdictional benches were established subsequently. Even later, 3 more benches were formed in 2018, 2 benches in 2019, have all been notified. But what is important, and this I would respond in response to Sri Pinaki Mishra, I would like to say, 67,749 cases have been dealt by the NCLT till 31st July of this year. Out of these, 49,900 cases have been disposed of, and 19,844 cases are pending as of 31st July. And I think in honor of this House, I would say this is a remarkable achievement for a tribunal which is working on an IBC code which is only 3.5 years old as of today. If tribunal can deliver this kind of a result, compared to all that I read out about how the Lok Adalat and Sarfesi have performed, this is the performance. I agree, we need to strengthen them. There was a very pertinent question Pinaki ji asked. Will there be a surge of insolvency proceedings after the suspension is lifted? Our assessment is it's unlikely, given that the stakeholders have very many options, even during the COVID period, for recovery of loan, as I earlier mentioned. And therefore, resolution of stress need not only be like this, they can be always mid-course resolution through the various mechanisms which are there. There may even be very many innovative options which people may adopt, particularly during these challenging times. So I also can see the number being lesser because companies have normal business operations even during the pandemic. Not very many of them, at least some of them. There is also a higher threshold given of default for initiation of insolvency proceedings of MSMEs. That was made as an announcement. The threshold has been raised to 1 crore. So we expect that many of the MSMEs wouldn't even come near it. And then we have very clearly, through this amendment, which I suppose all of you all will be responding to positively, that the defaults occurring out of this particular pandemic are being kept out forever. During the pandemic, problem is kept out forever. So I can see Honorable Speaker rushing with the time. He has quite a few demands. I think largely I have addressed many of the questions which honorable members have raised. If there's anything at all further for me to explain, I'll do it subsequently when I see each one of you all. There is a special financial service providers framework, and the section 227 of the IBC has been used in the context of banks, which I can see Supriya ji putting a hand up, and therefore, but that's the last point which Anumati I would like to say. At present, the code has 2 sections, which are 234 and 235, which deal with cross-border insolvency. And because it's an important thing, Insolvency Law Committee has submitted its comprehensive report, which the ministry is going through. Hopefully we'll come up with something sooner on that. So that is about all that I have to give in terms of the answers, sir, and thank you very much for giving me. There was one last question on Sri Jaydev Galla saying, what about the Amaravati bench which is still in Hyderabad? Yes, Amaravati bench has been named and notified, but it's still in Hyderabad, pending infrastructural development in Amaravati. So till then, unfortunately, it has to remain there. That is about all that I have to say. Arvind Savantji did speak about why the state does not do anything about things when companies are going bad. The state does not have a role in this. This is clearly a commercial. A committee of creditors take a call, and if there is no resolution plan or a resolution plan is unacceptable to those committee of creditors, then it goes to liquidation. Government has no role in this. Thank you, sir.